Hello there, one and all, ladies and gentlemen, hello, and welcome to the second edition of The HUD, hosted by your man, your pal, your boy, LandO, aka LandO Calrissian, YouTuber, streamer, host of The HUD, most importantly. But yes, this is the second episode of The HUD. It's always a fantastic time to be here with all of you. But yes, today's episode, as you guys can see off to the right, the lineup, we're going to be talking about single elimination yet again. I know, it's just a number of different topics that have kind of gone on. Aches has recently made a video kind of talking about the current state of the Call of Duty community, which we'll get to. Of course, you can see that in the lineup as well. I know Optic recently in their Optic podcast, series that they don't really tend to do every single week. When they do, it's always obviously a good time. They kind of talked about that one as well, talking about single elimination, their thoughts on the Call of Duty community. There's just been a lot of, big vocal people who have kind of talked up about the competitive scene over the last few weeks, or last few days, really. This week, more specifically, talking about COD's current state, the issues and why, the issues why competitive Call of Duty just doesn't seem to have that same feel that it used to. The reason why we're all so passionate about it is because of past memories that we've had, which we'll obviously be talking about today. Talking about a number of different stuff, though. You can see, obviously, single elimination is on the list. The idea of more leagues in competitive Call of Duty, would it be a good idea to add another league into Call of Duty World League? Having an amateur league, would that kind of benefit us? Maybe not. Of course, like I said, we talk about single elimination, another league idea, the Aches video, a number of different stuff. A lot of drama is going to happen. Not really drama. I want to put that out. The definition of drama to me is different. It's different to say drama in some cases because of the fact that whenever you say YouTube or drama in the same sentence, everyone's immediate attention automatically goes to a certain group of individuals who have had problems on the internet, something along those lines. Whenever I say drama, I don't mean drama necessarily. Just a lot of outspokenness, things that have kind of risen on Reddit, on YouTube, on Twitter a lot recently, which has obviously made for some interesting talk, which is what we're going to be talking about today. We have a jam-packed, pretty interesting show for you guys to talk about. Really looking forward to this one. And but I'm going to give a shout out to all of you who tuned into the first HUD episode. It was a fantastic time. I see a lot of familiar faces in the chat right now. YouTube, if you guys are on YouTube right now, appreciate you listening. All right, I'm going to give a massive shout out to the people on YouTube. You guys are absolutely fantastic people. Get a lot of support on YouTube. People are kind of talking. I also want to ask the chat right now, who's currently live in the chat, your guys' overall thoughts about the idea of maybe me adding a webcam. Now, the whole point of the show in the first place was for this kind of be like more like a radio show kind of aspect. I kind of add certain things to make it feel a little bit more like a radio show. If you guys are interested in that, feel free to let me know. If not, though, then also let me know that because I'm kind of leaning more toward maybe adding a webcam, maybe adding one, because I could do that pretty easily. Just the whole radio show aspect of me was the whole reason why I did it in the first place, kind of the whole genre of what I'm trying to do. It's a little bit different, it's not the same as a regular webcam show that we've had in the past. But if you guys are interested, let me know. If you're not, let me know that still, because I still want to know. But yes, thank you very much to the YouTube listeners as well as the chat that we have. Really do appreciate you guys. Are absolutely awesome. And yeah, I'm looking forward to obviously having another episode of what has been a fantastic run so far for the HUD. So yes, topics today. First thing we're going to talk about is Call of Duty XP, the tournament that is the most hyped tournament of all time, yet it is not the most hyped tournament of all time. It kind of depends. You know what I mean? Really, realistically, it kind of depends how you brand it. Technically, it is the biggest tournament that Call of Duty competitive esports has ever had, yet it is not one that's really being talked about. It's probably the least biggest, I want to put it in quotes, COD champs that has ever happened in some cases. But yeah, along with that, though, the Call of Duty XP details have kind of been released, or at least more talked about, if you kind of want to put it that way. It's been more talked about as of late. Why? Because some of the qualification matches are actually happening tomorrow. Yeah, there's actually some qualifications for Call of Duty XP tournaments happening tomorrow. Not many people actually know about that, including myself, when I was doing research actually yesterday for what I thought I might record the episode, actually what was today, yesterday. I didn't end up doing that. But whenever I was talking about, episodes, doing stuff like that, I was like, you know what, I'm going to wait, do this episode tomorrow, and I'm glad that I did, because I found out all this information, that yes, the ANZ qualifiers are actually going to happen tomorrow. Yeah, it's actually going to be happening tomorrow. A total of 16 teams, 2 teams from those 16 will obviously qualify for Call of Duty XP, along with the already locked-in squads, which we'll talk about here in just a second. European as well. EU is also going to be going on tomorrow as well. The 24-team tournament will end out with 8 teams who will end up making it to the Call of Duty XP tournament. And from the NA, it is going to happen on August 12th through the 14th, I believe. That's the exact date. I believe that is correct. And also, it's going to be the weekend tournament. For those who may not know, it's going to happen all over the weekend. And that will have a 32-team tournament with 10 teams making it to Call of Duty XP, along with the already set 12. For those who don't know, the teams are already locked in for Call of Duty XP. Not trying to give like a constant amount of knowledge or like a constant amount of like announcements or anything like that. I just want to kind of point this out there before we start talking. Not necessarily ranting, but kind of just going over certain things. But yes, the teams are already locked in for Call of Duty XP. From right now, I believe from the NA, it's currently in no current order as far as like champ points or anything like that are concerned. Is DT, FaZe, Luminosity Gaming, Envious, OG, and Rise Nation. From Europe, it is currently Hyper Games, Millennium Splice, and Infused. And from ANZ, it is Mindfreak as well as Orbit. So yes, I talked about my whole point. To me, is obviously a major issue just to the fact that everyone within the guidelines can apply actually for this. That's the thing to kind of mention as well. The whole point of this entire thing is that everyone within the guidelines can actually apply for this tournament. That's a great thing, right? To me, it's a great thing. Everyone is within the guidelines. If you have a team of 4, let's hop into the tournament. Let's give her a whack at this particular tournament. If you're in the ANZ, the EU especially, it's weird, okay? So if you have a team, if you have a squad, group of 4 guys, 3 guys, if you don't want to include yourself, group of 4 guys who want to play in this particular tournament, well, you can enter yourself into the tournament. However, only a select few. If you look in the articles that people have posted, if you look in the chat of people talking on Reddit, if you look at the little details, it talks about everyone within the guidelines can apply. However, only a few will be chosen based on pro points. So, for example, say you have the NA, right? 32 teams can compete in the online qualifier. However, though, that is only the top 32 as far as pro points are considered, regardless of the teams who already haven't qualified for Call of Duty XP. So, you have your DTs, your FaZe, your LGs, MVOGs, and Rise Nation. They can't compete in this tournament. Why? Because they're already in Call of Duty XP. They can't qualify twice. But you do have 32 teams who are going to be in this tournament based on pro points. So that whole idea of saying, oh yeah, everyone can actually apply for this tournament, but based on pro points, you probably will not be chosen. I mean, if you don't have any Call of Duty World League points right now, if you haven't gone to any tournaments, if you haven't played in the 500 series, you haven't placed pretty high, you most likely aren't going to be able to. Now, you can apply, but you can't compete. That's the thing to kind of mention. I don't want anyone to waste any of their time. People were kind of complaining about this. To me, it's not the only thing to complain about, if I'm honest. I mean, it's like realistically, I don't know. I feel like it's a known thing. People should kind of, at least in my opinion, realize that this is a thing. If you are going to try and compete at this tournament, you should at least have some experience. You need to have some Call of Duty World League points. It is unfortunate that not every single person can apply, because if you could, then you'd have like a 128-team tournament, and then you'd have a lot of teams who might get out early, which is kind of unfortunate that could happen. You just want to make it as competitive as possible. So I totally understand the whole thing with this. Just to me, the whole issue with all of this, besides the fact that people are kind of focusing on, to me is the fact that this is happening tomorrow for the EU and the ANZ, and hardly anybody knows about it. I believe around 5 or 6 hours ago when I last checked, if anyone wants to go and check, you can feel free to do so. When I last checked, the ANZ only has 6 teams who have signed up for this. 6 teams have actually tried to qualify for this. I don't know about EU or ANZ. I don't know about EU and NA. I think the only NA team who has done it so far is Kingdom. From what I saw, Kingdom Esports the last time that I checked on it. So yeah, that's kind of odd to me. The fact that the communication has kind of been out the window about this topic, that no one really knows about it. It's kind of I don't know. It's kind of odd. I don't know if it's odd to anyone else. I think it's kind of strange. That is just my opinion, though. But yes, that will be taking place very, very shortly. Those are obviously going to be the last defining spots and who can compete in Call of Duty XP, the apparent $2 million tournament, which is going to be pretty interesting, to say the least. So, yes. So that is obviously Call of Duty XP information. If anyone would like to talk about that in the chat, discuss certain things, feel free to do so. And I also forgot to mention as well, when it comes down to the HUD, for those who may be new, if you've experienced it before, throughout the entire show, if you have any comments, any questions, you can obviously talk about that during the show, but if you would like me to answer it, if you'd like me to, kind of, at least for us to have a major discussion about it, feel free to wait till the end of the show to kind of talk about that, or to bring it up, especially because it's going to be a lot easier for me to answer your question if you're bringing it up toward the end of the show. I normally try to keep the lineup as basic, or not as basic, but as good as possible. But in the end, it's when the major questions can be asked. So it says 7 teams for the ANZ currently. Thank you very much, the Real Man Bee. So yes, 7 teams have have applied, and I believe by like midnight tonight, maybe there's only 7 teams. I don't know how long the ANZ is going to last for. Because I know their time difference is obviously a little bit separate to us. But yeah, that's really unfortunate. The fact that there's only been one team who has signed up in the last few hours when it's a 16-team tournament. Like, that shouldn't be very difficult to fill up. Unfortunately, it is. So yeah, that's kind of how it's looking right now for the Call of Duty XP tournament. Kind of unfortunate as far as that is considered. But yes, so let's go on to talk about single elimination. So I have talked about single elimination a lot of times. Not just on, when I say like I've talked about it a lot, I've talked about it on a number of different shows, whether it's been the Sticks, whether it's been my YouTube channel, whether it's even been the last episode of the HUD. I have talked about single elimination many, many times. And until we start realizing, until single elimination stops being a thing, I will continue to talk about it. Not to the same extent. I'm not going to say the same thing over and over again. I'm not going to have like an audio recorder where I record myself say something and I replay it on the stream again. The whole issue of single elimination, to me, is a very, very simple topic, and yet we still have the format in place. Now, for those who, like I said, who have kind of watched and been able to see what has gone on in the competitive scene, you've been able to watch YouTube videos, you've seen the Optic podcast, maybe you've seen Ake's video, you've seen streams, players talking about single elimination, and kind of just bringing up the whole issue that they don't feel comfortable with it. And that's the same thing that I talked about. And I said that I can understand, right? I can understand a playoff aspect. I can understand in certain situations where you want to have single elimination. It's normal in other esports. Notice I say in other esports. It's normal in other esports for that to happen. But in a game of Call of Duty, in an esport like Call of Duty, where games literally last 10 minutes at the most, unless overtime happens, which is what, like maybe 12, 14 minutes? I mean, how often do we see a map be replayed that's actually accurate? Like, maybe we see a match or a map be replayed, but the only reason why that is because of, like an error that happened, like someone, lags out or communication or something like that happens. Normally, if ever, that's like 1 in like 1,000 chance that we're ever going to see a overtime CTF or an overtime uplink. I won't say at 1 in 1,000, but there's a very low possibility that we see a match be completely replayed that goes over that 10-minute time limit, or even where we play 20 minutes for one particular game type, because that doesn't happen very often. So to me, the whole issue with single elimination is that, hey, maybe we want to cut down time. We want to cut down time for the broadcast. We want to make sure that it's timely. People aren't getting bored with watching it in some cases. However, though, it can be incredibly, incredibly boring to watch not really best of 7, but like long series, right? I can understand long series. You want to have like maybe a best of 7 in some cases. You want to have certain things go on. However, though, I feel like personally that maybe the Call of Duty World League, maybe tournament organizers are doing best of 7 single elimination because they want to make it, in some ways, in their case, more intense. Because at every moment, every single tournament, every single match that's going on in that tournament, that team is 1 loss away from being knocked out. But that don't get me wrong, that adds a level of, I don't really know how to give the exact adjective or the exact word, but it puts you on the end of your seat, right? If you're an Optic fan, if you're a fan of a certain team who is playing and they're 1 loss away at all times throughout that tournament of being knocked out, of course you're gonna be really scared. I mean, you're gonna be very, very nervous to hopefully realize that your squad isn't going to be knocked out. That is normal, right? That is a normal thing. That I've seen happen, right? That's something that I'm kind of curious about to see what kind of goes on. I believe someone just linked me something. What is this? I'm trying to read. What is this? They only use. Hold on. I apologize to stop at the middle of my talk, but I realized I saw a double elimination format chant. What is this? Hold on. Are we gonna get an update in the middle of the show? Hold on. I'm gonna read this entire thing for all of us. Okay. If you're listening to this, if you're watching, let's read. All right. Announcing format changes to Call of Duty World League Championship presented by PlayStation 4 and online qualifiers. This is exciting. Effective immediately, the Call of Duty World League Championship and online qualifiers will be double elimination. I need to calm down. Effective immediately, the Call of Duty World League Championship and online qualifiers will be double elimination format. Thank you to the community for providing feedback. That is like the funniest thing I've ever read. Thank you to the community for providing feedback about the CWL tournament format at this time. We can confirm that effective immediately, the Call of Duty World League Championship presented by PlayStation 4 and the online qualifiers North America, Europe, and Australia, New Zealand have been changed to a best-of-5 double elimination format. We appreciate the input from the players and fans and will continue to listen to your feedback and suggestions. Congratulations to Team Envy, Millennium, and Mind Freak for their Stage 2 finals wins, and congratulations to the 6 North American, 4 European, and 2 Australian teams who have already qualified for COD Champs. Here's to an excellent Call of Duty World League Championship at Call of Duty XP. Well, there you go, guys. They listened to the show, they're listening to this live, and they posted an article in celebration. And we did it. The HUD has done it. The HUD has changed the world at the fact that double elimination is now a thing. I mean, hey, someone put in the chat, that there goes that segment. I am fine. That is huge, guys. That is huge. We had it happen live on the show. I am so happy. This is such a good thing, right? Because my whole thing that I was going to talk about, is that I am so tired of hearing, people talking about single elimination, because we should just finally talk about it. But this is fantastic. This is fantastic, guys. I'm going to post it on Twitter right now. This doesn't happen often. We're talking about this live, talking about this now. This is perfect radio. This is perfect radio that is happening. I need to post this. I'm sorry. I'm pretty giddy right now, man. I am giddy. I'm excited. This is wonderful. So now, hey, let's switch this around, right? Let's switch this around, because I'm trying to figure out if this is only for online. Because if you read the title, it says announcing format changes to Call of Duty World League Championship presented by PlayStation 4 and online qualifiers. So to me, does that mean for both? Because I'm pretty sure it means both, right? Because they talk about Call of Duty World League, right? Am I correct on that? I feel like I'm telling the truth. I'm pretty sure that when it comes down to LAN, we're playing double elimination at both. I'm pretty sure that has to be the case. That has to be the case, right? Am I wrong? I feel like I'm correct here. Because it says it would say if it was only online qualifiers, it would say announcing format changes to the PlayStation 4 online qualifiers or the Call of Duty World League Championship online qualifiers. However, it says for the Call of Duty World League Championship, which is Call of Duty XP, presented by PlayStation 4, and the online qualifiers. And so, yes, we can officially be the first news outlet for all of you listening. This is the first show that is going live that is talking about the online qualifiers and everything now being double elimination. So my whole talk about this was to mention the Optic podcast. They spoke about it. There was major talk on Reddit. Everyone talking and saying, you know what, this is a problem. This is something that we need to be fixing. And the Call of Duty World League is just not listening to us. Well, I'm not giving any credit to Call of Duty World League. I'm not saying, for example, that they weren't listening to us. However, though, here, I'm actually going to change something really quick. I need to change the oh, whoops, I didn't mean to do that. I need to change this to double, right? I need to change that to double. I'm doing this live on the show. I apologize. This has been a wild ride so far. And I'm kind of caught off guard because I have a lot of notes talking about single elimination. So let's just be honest, right? My whole point to talk about today on the show was single elimination. I don't want to talk about it for too long because my whole problem with it was a number of different reasons. But now let's talk about the positives to double elimination. Let's talk about the positives to something rather than the negatives, because I'd much rather talk about it that way. There was a Reddit post, Call of Duty World League Rob, or CWL Rob, I believe, on Reddit. And the question that he had asked and the thing that he had posted said that pro players were split whenever they brought up the question of single elimination, double elimination. Apparently, the question that was asked, according to Crim6 on the Optic podcast, was, do you mind single elimination? And I can understand the question, and I don't know the format that it was asked, because sometimes you don't want to be like a hassle to anyone. Hey, do you mind single elimination or double elimination? Well, normally you say, I hate single elimination, I love double elimination. But sometimes if you're put in a situation where it's like, hey man, do you mind single elimination? At times you can kind of be lenient. I can totally understand how that would be the case. So the whole fact to me is that the reasoning why that was such a big deal because everyone was like, you're a liar, this is not true, no one thinks that single elimination, double elimination is a good idea. So I think there was just a little bit of miscommunication between the players and the people who were involved with it in the beginning. So now the difference between single elimination and double elimination. I am so glad that this is now a thing. This is huge, not just for competitive Call of Duty, not just for Call of Duty XP, but for competitive Call of Duty in general. Because this is the biggest tournament of the entire year. Not just the entire year, the biggest tournament that Call of Duty Esports will ever have, but has ever had. And up to this point, has had. So to have a $2 million tournament, potentially, and what would have been decided by single elimination, which is now double elimination, and it's now best of 5. Did I read that correctly as well? No best of 7s, best of 5, double elimination, to me, is perfect. That is the perfect format that we could have, and we could not be asking for a better format than that. So to me, to kind of put this to rest, the single elimination talk, thank you, first of all, to the Call of Duty World League for listening to the players, for listening. I'm not sure who it was. I know someone mentioned Mud Dog in the chat. I know he's obviously involved. But this is a big deal. This is a huge deal because now the Call of Duty World League has listened. They've reached out and said, you know what? We understand the whole thing with single elimination, and they've fixed it. They've mended what has been a interesting relationship for the past few weeks, and this is just the first step that they can potentially take to helping the Call of Duty scene grow. This is only a positive. There's no negatives to this. If you're a fan of single elimination, I understand the whole aspect of maybe being not really a younger fan or just someone who enjoys the whole fact of what's on the line. However, though, the entire thing and the entire point behind all of this is that the format is back to normal. The format is the way that it should be, and not just one series will decide your fate. You are in charge of what happens, which can make Champs, in my opinion, or Call of Duty XP a much better tournament in general. Guys, we're going to take a quick break. When we return, talk about a little bit of interesting ideas as far as another league, things like CEVO, ESEA, and CSGO, as well as Aches' video where he talks about the Call of Duty scene, drama, storylines, as well as Ghost and Black Ops 2. What will make Call of Duty esports great again? There's a lot of politics going on recently, so I'm not trying to get involved with that, but you guys know what I'm kind of talking about. But we'll be right back. When we return, more talk about the Call of Duty, as well as another league and Aches' video. Be right back. Welcome back, you beautiful people, to the HUD, hosted by your man, your boy, your friend, your ally on the internet. It's been LandO. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in up to this point. I know it's been kind of a shaky show. I just kind of pointed that out, tweeted it out actually on Twitter. I'm not going to lie, I was very kind of thrown back by the whole, bringing up of single elimination to double elimination. That was like literally tweeted out live as we were kind of talking about certain things. And as we were actually on break, I was actually looking at Twitter along with my tweet, and I was looking at all the pro players kind of thanking and saying thank you Call of Duty World League, you guys have done it. This is exactly what we needed. This is the smart decision. Thank God for double elimination. Has tweeted out my Slack. A number of different guys though, just incredibly excited about the whole topic of double elimination. Everyone's excited about it. It's only a positive thing. This is not at all a negative in any cases, realistically. Just because of the fact of what single elimination does. It's It's an interesting format. It's not something that anyone prefers. And when it comes down to the biggest tournament that competitive Call of Duty has ever had, you have got to have the double elimination format. It's the way it is, man. Call of Duty is much different than every other esport. It's not an esport that's going to last. It's not each game lasts like 40, 45 minutes like a CS game, or like an hour, maybe like a Dota 2 or a League of Legends game. They don't last that long. You're not pressured for time when it comes down to Call of Duty and you know, like single elimination stats or single elimination just in general. Double elimination, it's the way to go. It's the only way to go, might I add. It's not just like one way. It's like, no, that is what you have to have at tournaments. And I can understand playoff formats. If they want to do something a little bit differently, you know, I can give them that. But when it comes down to regular tournaments, double elimination, we have to have that. We've got to hold on. There's only so many things that sometimes when people kind of come into a particular thing and they want to make it their own way, they want to, you know, mend it to what has been their entire idea, or what has worked for them in other esports. You can only let them have so much. So, to me, I think double elimination is something that I'm glad that we fought for. I'm something glad that we've kind of vocalized. We haven't been super negative. We haven't, as far as like major people, leaders in the community, we haven't said, oh my gosh, you know, hey, Call of Duty World League, you guys suck. Like, there's been a lot of respectable, you know, conversations that people have had saying, you know what, we need double elimination. We need certain things like this. So to me, closing thoughts, double elimination, it's a good thing. It's a positive thing. It's something that we've needed for a very, very long time. Not really a very, very long time, but over the past, really run throughout Black Ops 3, to be honest. So yes, really happy about that. Really happy with the entire idea of double elimination over single elimination. And I know it happened live on the show. Kind of a slower start to what has been the HUD, but I appreciate everyone who's kind of stuck around with it. We've kind of learned that. We've kind of learned it together. So I'm glad that kind of happened as well. So let's go and move on, of course. So next topic that we're going to be talking about is actually something that I saw on Reddit. That I actually made a video about. I think we might have had a question about it maybe on the first episode of the HUD. I think I briefly talked about it for you know, a minute, a hot minute, but it's the whole topic of the idea of another league, because it's something that we can actually kind of lead into when we talk about Call of Duty XP, or talk about the growth of Call of Duty esports. Is, you know, now that we have a double elimination back, which hopefully is a thing that's going to stay for a while, is the topic now that it comes down to another league. The idea that we need another league in Call of Duty esports, to me, has been something that I've asked ever since the Call of Duty World League was introduced. Ever since we had the MLG Pro League, and we had the UMG Semi-Pro League, which is, I believe, hosted or ran by Perfect Alliance. Ever since that was a thing, ever since that was introduced, or brought up, I have automatically always been a fan of it. Now I want to point out, though, that when it comes down to another league, before we even talk about the whole idea of a separate league, or not really a separate league, but a league that kind of maybe even dives into what is the Call of Duty World League, my whole point is that when it comes down to the aspect of a pro player or a competitive, I'll say competitive player, because I'm not a huge fan of the whole amateur to pro player, you know, analysis. I can never call Merc an amateur player. I can never call Aches. I can never call TP. I can never call, you know, insert player here who has been a pro all of their life, and it so happens that they're not in the Call of Duty World League, and then all of a sudden they're now an amateur. I look at the definition of amateur differently than I think a lot of people do, which I'm not even sure what that exact definition is. But just because someone isn't in the Call of Duty World League doesn't mean that I associate them with the title of an amateur. And even if you want to call it, because technically the definition of a professional means that you were getting paid for doing a particular thing. Or for example, if you're a professional basketball player, that means you're getting paid to play basketball. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're in the NBA, but you can be defined as a professional player or professional of a certain thing, because that means that you are being paid to do it. So whenever I say the definition of professional, you could look at the guys on Echo Fox who aren't in the Call of Duty World League. They are technically under the name of professionals. And that's the issue with esports, is because we give certain titles for certain things, and just, even though it's not accurate, everyone kind of realizes, like, oh, the definition of a professional means that you're in the Call of Duty World League. If you're not, then you're automatically an amateur. There's just a lot of talk. There's a lot of names that are given out to certain players or certain teams. They're not necessarily the most, you know, normal, I guess you could say. But my whole point is that we need another league. We need something besides the Call of Duty World League to grow the Call of Duty esports hole that we have. Because I can understand some people don't like the Call of Duty World League. Some people don't like the whole idea of how the Call of Duty World League format is done, which I think it's a fine format, to be honest. I mean, just because the games get stale doesn't mean that the format's the problem. So my whole point behind another league, the idea of another league, is that when you look at the whole idea of competitive players in Call of Duty esports, that 95% of competitive players in Black Ops 3 are not the Call of Duty World League. You have a number of different really good talent players. If you want to call them amateurs, that's fine. You have a lot of really, really good players who aren't in the Call of Duty World League, and that makes up a very, very big amount of the percentage of what Call of Duty competitive really is. You look at the teams who are playing on UMG. Look at the definition of players who are playing on MLG. There's a lot of guys playing on there who aren't the Call of Duty World League. If not a very high percentage of them, like 99.9% of them are not Call of Duty World League players. I'm not saying that all of them would make this semi-pro league in quotes. But to me, there needs to be an answer for players who aren't necessarily at the Call of Duty World League level or who aren't at that current time. Because I'm sure there are players, if you want to name off, the top teams who aren't necessarily considered to be professional players at this point in time. Squads like Echo Fox, is one that I kind of bring up. Teams like C9 Eclipse, rosters who are, constantly competing in the open bracket and getting top placings. And I think that they need an outlet to kind of produce their skill, besides, wagers, besides, playing in S&D only tournaments or playing in, non-heat wave, no overkill UMG or MLG tournaments. Not that there's anything wrong with the MLG or UMG tournaments. If anything, that helps the scene grow. My whole point, though, is that there needs to be another avenue to where players who are trying to aspire to be pro players or professional, being under the title of professional, being in the Call of Duty World League, which I know there's a lot of definitions that I could use for this, but to be in the Call of Duty World League, and there's not really too many outlets to do that. Because if you're trying to make money as a professional player, it's not easy because you got to be in the Call of Duty World League, and most of the time, even if you are in the Call of Duty World League, you do have to sacrifice a lot of things. If you're not on a main team, if you're not on one of the biggest teams who's constantly being, offered sponsorship deals, if you're not on an Optic, an Envy, a Rise, a Fate, whatever you want to kind of throw out there, if you're not on a top team, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're getting a constant payday that's going to make your life completely stable. You know what I mean? That's something to me that I obviously talk about that I mentioned in the past. But my whole point behind talking and giving an introduction to this is that there needs to be another league composed of however many teams. And the whole idea is to me is the fact of, is it beneficial right now? Are you going to instantly make a profit off of this, right? Are you going to be making money if you're going to pay commentators, if you're going to pay a stream person to kind of run this, stats, whatever have you? You're going to have employees to run this stream, to run this league particular. Is it beneficial? Are you going to make a lot of money off of this? Not necessarily. That's just a true statement. However, though, sometimes you have to invest money to make something out of it. You only get so much out of it as much as you put in some cases. So to me, the whole idea of a semi-pro league, or if you want to put it as an amateur league, a non-Call of Duty World League league, I think there needs to be something else, though. I really do. I think there needs to be something else. I think right now, it's either the Call of Duty World League or nothing. If you're not in the Call of Duty World League, you automatically get the title taken away from you, which I personally don't put into perspective, but people automatically take that away from you. You're not necessarily making very much money. You're not being invited to what has been a majority of the tournaments this year. What have you had? UMG South Carolina. You might have had a couple of locals. You've had MLG Anaheim. You'll have MLG Orlando. 3 events. You think you're going to make a year worth of salary off of that? I don't think so, unless you're living with your parents or if you have money off of that. My whole point, though, is that I want to get to the point in Call of Duty esports to where just because you're not in the main vein of what is Call of Duty esports at that current time, that you can still make a healthy, or just make a living off of it. Make a living off of it, maybe even not being a professional defined player. I know people are kind of putting in the chat, or Epic Boss Killer, saying COD is too small right now. But you got to start somewhere, man. You got to start somewhere. You got to, right? Because your whole point to want to grow Call of Duty esports is that over a time, you're going to have a cycle of players. Players are going to leave this year. That's when players start to kind of come up. And the whole way that you do that, the whole process that makes that a lot easier is by having a semi-pro league, being able to witness the talent that comes from the amateurs, that comes from the players who aren't necessarily in the limelight all the time. We were lucky to be able to witness Advanced Warfare, not the game Advanced Warfare, but the talent that rose through Advanced Warfare. You had TR guys. You have, which is obviously like Nagafin, Remy, Aches, or not Aches, what am I saying? Nagafin, Facento, those guys who ended up, getting runner-up at Call of Duty Championships. You had Octane, who's currently on Rise Nation, considered to be a top 2, top 3 AR in the game right now. An AR in Advanced Warfare as well as Black Ops 3. Along with that, you have the younger guys. You had TJ, you had Hook, you had Temp. A lot of guys who kind of rose to the scene in Advanced Warfare. And the major majority of that is through online tournaments. Not just online tournaments, but being able to go to, open events, being able to go to a number of different avenues that they had. Well, now those are closed up. So where do you go from here, right? If I'm an amateur player and I want to, show my talent, what are my options? Wagers? Well, you could do that. Playing in online tournaments, the 500 series stuff, you could do that, maybe, at times. The 2Ks and 5Ks, those don't really exist anymore. Well, how do I go to an open event? Well, you want to wait 2 months, 3 months at a time between whenever those actually happen, at least for this year. You have to wait a while. So, my whole point behind the idea of a semi-pro league is the fact that I want it to be run by the Call of Duty World League. I want it to be in part of the Call of Duty World League. And I want it to have a prize pool. I want it to have sponsorships. I want it to be not only to the biggest deal in the world, but being able to promote another one, I think is only a good thing. Because my whole point is that we have very, very talented teams. And it also gives an avenue to squads who may be in the Call of Duty World League in the limelight. It just makes things a lot easier, in my opinion. Not necessarily easier, but it provides and it makes sense, at least in my opinion. It makes a lot of sense because you have an opportunity where players can start to make money, and they can get, in some ways, lead to that process, get to the road into being in the Call of Duty World League. And maybe if you even wanted to, you knock out the relegation tournament. That can exist by having the semi-pro league involved with it as well. A growing process, right? And I'm not sure how this is all going to work. I'm not saying that we have to have this idea. My whole point is that just because you're only going to have so many spots in the Call of Duty World League. Because not even including the EU or the ANZ, 48 players? 48 players are in the Call of Duty World League NA, 12 times 4. Very good math there. 48 players are going to be in the Call of Duty World League. If you want to include subs, that's fine. It's not, really valid. But there needs to be another avenue because there are a lot of guys out there who've competed. Not all of them are going to be able to be in the next stage. Not all of them are going to be able to be consistently playing. However, if you add a semi-pro league, if you add another league, in my opinion, that is going to make Call of Duty grow. That is going to help it grow in ways that I can't really explain. Because I think that it gives someone else something to fight for. It makes it to where it's a lot easier to transition from that semi-pro to pro status. And it's all behind the Call of Duty World League. It's all behind them. They can host events. They can have tournaments here and there. It doesn't have to be the biggest, of all time. It doesn't have to be like huge prize pools. But just give them a chance. Give them an opportunity to where they can rise to the occasion and be labeled as professional players as well. That is my whole point behind the idea of another league. I know CSGO has made strides with doing that. The ESEA, CEVO, whatever you kind of want to point out there. I know the E-League is obviously a big thing that's going on, hosted by TBS on, I believe, like Fridays or something like that. And also on stream as well. E-League TV, I believe is what it's called on Twitch. You can watch that. My whole point is that we need another avenue to where Call of Duty esports can be accessed by. I think it'd be a good opportunity, like I said, for semi-pro players, even for commentators as well, people who are running the stream. It's just overall, I think it's something that we've needed for a long time. And exactly, I think Epic Boss Killer put it perfectly in the chat. You need to give players more exposure. You need to give them an opportunity to where they can showcase their talent and where they can get noticed. And that's to me, a perfect opportunity to do so. Now, like I said, if you're not going to get the most viewership out of it, right? You're not going to get crazy amounts of viewership out of it. But if you do it correctly, it will grow. It will. I promise you that. And that's just my whole point, my whole topic behind wanting to talk about the whole idea of another league. Because to me, it's beneficial. It may not seem like it at the beginning, but in generality, I promise you that it will grow after time. Now I want to talk about for my last topic of the HUD for today, second episode, is the Aches video that was released. The video by Aches, which I can't actually remember. I need to actually look it up and see what the title of it was. Because it was actually a really, I believe it was actually, now that I remember, I think it was titled Plutonium. I think is what it was called. For those of you interested, if you want to check it out, feel free to do so. It's a really interesting video that I personally was a huge fan of. It's around like an hour long. And essentially what ends up happening throughout the video is that he talks about Call of Duty's current state. And he brings up a lot of really good points in that video. It's something to me that I was... while I was listening to it, I was in some cases like, well, you know, is he really like... Whenever you first started talking about the video, I was like, is this going to be like a rant video? Whenever I heard the description, whenever I heard the description of what people were talking about it, I thought it was like maybe like a stream highlight. I wasn't exactly sure what it was, but no. It's a video that he released, and he's been kind of focusing more on his content recently. For those who know Aches, I mean, he isn't really normally a major streamer. He doesn't upload YouTube videos that often, but he's kind of trying to get in toward that vein. I think it's a really good decision from him that I've really enjoyed. I have a lot of respect for Aches, one of the top professional players of all time in Call of Duty esports, whether it's not really necessarily been as prevalent recently. You cannot doubt the man's talent over the past few years. Really just in general his Call of Duty, career. So he made a video titled Plutonium, and it's basically where he's in a lobby. It's like in a Black Ops 3 lobby. He's kind of talking about the game. It's kind of like a podcast feel to it, if I'm honest. He just kind of talks about the competitive scene, where its current state is, in his opinion, and what really it needs to be at for it to grow, and what really made Black Ops 2 and Ghost be an interesting game. And the major whole thing that he was talking about behind the video was storylines. And if you have watched, like I said, previous shows that I have been in, if you've watched the Sticks Live, if you've watched my YouTube channel, and this is before like storylines was like a thing that people talked about. Like, this was maybe like the beginning of AW toward the middle of Advanced Warfare. I wasn't sure what exactly to call the whole thing with Ghost and Black Ops 2. And this is what I said. I was like, the whole reason why I enjoyed Ghost specifically, even though it wasn't a great game, because not really many people enjoy playing Ghosts. To me, the worst two games that I've played in Call of Duty, as far as like a playing aspect, was normally, besides like maybe Ghost Search and Destroy, was Ghost and Advanced Warfare. Ghost to me was, it's boots on the ground, which is probably why I like it more than Advanced Warfare, but just two games that I did not enjoy playing whatsoever. When it came down to Ghost, I played more Black Ops 2 than I did during the actual Black Ops 2 season. Advanced Warfare, played more Black Ops 2 than I probably did during Ghosts. Just how it kind of went for me personally. Regardless of that, though, regardless of actual gameplay, the reason why Ghosts was such an entertaining game, and the reason why I personally made this comment a while ago, was that I loved being able to tune into his stream, tune into what was going on, and just be, I don't really know the exact definition or what I'm trying to say, but just be swarmed by like all of the topics, all of the, I want to say drama, because I don't like the word drama, because I feel like it's kind of like an overused term today. But just be kind of swarmed with like, hey, what's going on in the scene right now? What's going on? Like, what are the not necessarily the storylines was the word I said, but like, what are the stories kind of happening right now? The whole issue with, and I think X kind of breaking it down. He was like, Black Ops 2 Ghost season, it was all about Optic versus Cole, Optic versus EG. Advanced Warfare was Optic versus FaZe, and past has been Optic versus Envy versus well, if you don't really want to go back far, Envy versus Fear, excuse me. COD 4 days, Black Ops 1 days. You were talking about, different teams who were kind of on the rise. Optic, back in Black Ops 1, they were kind of like one of the best teams at the time. You have Scump Squad as well. There's been storylines here and there, but there was no better storylines, in my opinion, than in Ghosts. I think maybe you can kind of put in Black Ops 2 as well. Black Ops 2 was such a young game that really no one knew what we were kind of getting into at the time. No one really knew like what Black Ops 2 would provide, because if you look at it, because if you came from like Black Ops 1 days, because this was kind of where I was involved with, for those who don't know my competitive history, whenever I was younger, I watched COD 4 back in like the 2008, 2009 days. I watched it when it was on console, watched the COD 4 Nationals, and I had no idea what I was watching. I had no idea what I was watching. I maybe played Call of Duty 4, a few times here and there. I wasn't. I wasn't like a person who was super invested in Call of Duty at the time. I played Call of Duty Big Red 1. I enjoyed playing Call of Duty, but it wasn't like where the extent obviously it is now. It wasn't even half or a fourth or a fifth of what it is now. But I was young. I didn't really know what I was watching. But I got involved with, Pro Mod. I watched that. I watched tournaments with that. Didn't realize that, Black Ops 1 was such a big scene. I got involved with the YouTube scene, so on and so forth. And my whole point was that Black Ops 2, it was a younger game for us that we didn't really know what we were getting involved with. No one had any idea that the growth that we would have through Black Ops 2. So to me, to say the storylines of Black Ops 2 were good, obviously they were good. It's going to be everyone's favorite competitive title, including mine, because it was a growing year. It was a year where we didn't really know exactly what to expect. We didn't know what was going to happen, or what really to expect. And we realized once Black Ops 2 was over, how amazing that year was, and how much growth that we experienced through all of that. So Ghost comes along. People are kind of not only like complaining about it. Everyone's excited for Ghost. The streaming is happening. Optics at the top as far as viewership is concerned. What Complexity had made their run. Everyone's like, wow, Complexity is amazing. All the storylines, the roster changes that have happened. Merc was dropped. What is going on here? There was a lot of awesome stuff that happened through Black Ops 2, but the storylines in Ghosts, where roster changes started to be a thing. People started to get invested in the players. And Black Ops 2, it was like, oh, I recognize that name. I recognize who that is. I don't know the face behind the name, but I know who that guy is. I've heard of his name in past. However, though, in Ghost is when you started to affiliate, for those who, unless you were fans prior, but a lot of people kind of came in the Black Ops 2 season, so I'm speaking to a majority of fans who maybe entered into that time. And most likely people who have watched this show at least are involved with Black Ops 2 and past, maybe not more recently. If you have, then that's fine, but I'm kind of trying to break it down a little bit. But Ghost to me was a season for a lot of people who kind of got introduced, and they said that I can finally be able to realize who exactly these guys are and associate, like I said, a name with a face. I know who this guy is now. I know what rosters that he's been on. I know his history, at least a recent history. And I have an idea of his past. I know who he is. I don't just see, for example, Proofy on a screen. I don't just see him, shooting someone. I don't see him getting on the objective and say, oh, that's Proofy. And then in Ghost, it was like, oh, that's Proofy. That's the guy who has been on Envious. That's the guy who's been playing Call of Duty since Call of Duty 4. That's the guy who was, one of the top players throughout Modern Warfare 2. That's when you start to associate and realize that that's who that guy is. And now you start to have a little bit of an idea of what's kind of going on as far as the competitive scene is concerned. So to me, Black Ops 2 to me was a good year, but it was a year that we kind of associated, say that's the best year that we've ever had.
Yeah.
And I know Ziggy is put in the chat and said, Black Ops 2 the best of all time. Don't at. I agree, man. I totally agree with that. But to me, Ghost though, as far as storylines are concerned, where like I said, I don't like to use the word drama, man. But that's whenever things started to pick up and people realized, okay, this is the thing. This is what's happening. Everyone hated Ghost. You remember that? Everyone hated Ghost. Everyone despised that game. But the reason why people enjoyed watching it, not just because of Search and Destroy, not as far as gameplay aspects, but they loved it for the storylines. They loved being able to hop on, watch Optic, you want to say Complexity for the first tournament, then EG. They loved to watch a number of different aspects that happened throughout the Ghost season, and it wasn't just gameplay. I mean, I remember tuning into Ghost streams and having a blast watching it because I was learning more than I had ever had about history of players, history of what has kind of happened in the competitive scene, because prior to Black Ops 2, you didn't really learn that much. You didn't really know exactly what had happened prior. It's when players started to speak out. YouTube videos started to become a thing. Streaming started to become a thing. 8 started to become a thing because you would watch them. And there's also the storyline where you saw a squad, a very popular team, slowly but surely started to rise up. And the fact is that Optic has kind of transformed into what has been one of the most dominant, squads of all time, the dynasty that they've been able to do, is that now the good guy's on top again. The good guy is succeeding every time. And I think this is a good point that Aches had mentioned in his video, is that he kind of talked about the WWE a lot, which I think is actually really, really interesting. It's actually really, really good. Is he's like, you watch the WWE for a certain reason. Everyone knows that WWE is fake. Everyone, if it's not, I apologize. It's like Santa not being real. Didn't know that either. But if you were a fan in Black Ops 2, fan in Ghost of Optic, you were with them for the long haul. You were saying, oh my gosh, they made it so close in that tournament. Optic was the fan favorite, and they still are now. That's the reason why so many fans will tune into Optic gaming matches, because they still have that vendetta, not really vendetta, but they have that feel, they have that, relationship that they've had with them throughout all these years, and said, you know what, I was with them since the beginning. I was with them since they, kind of struggled. When I mean that through Black Ops 2 and obviously through Ghosts. Like I said, every tournament was like, can Optic win? How would Cole/EG do? How are these new players that we don't really know about? How would the younger guys in Denial do? There's so many storylines throughout Ghosts, and we don't really have that. And we had it kind of at times in Advanced Warfare. But what has Black Ops 3 been? You know what I mean? It's been an online league where you don't see the communicate or hear the communication. You don't really see communication. You don't hear the communication coming from the players unless it's a VOD. For certain teams or certain players who like to post that kind of stuff. But there's no real drama. There's nothing to really look forward to. Because when it comes down to certain events, when it comes down to certain things, at Ghost, it's like, oh, Ghost is going to be interesting. This particular tournament, UMG Nashville is going to be great because we get to see this sort of thing line up. We get to see how Optic does because they just recently made a roster change. We get to see how does EG do the fact that they've replaced Clayster with Karma? How do they do because they've argued on Twitter? How are they going to do because they're going to face off against each other for the first time in this particular title? How are they going to do now that Proofy and Clayster have been dropped from the team and they picked up Karma and Crimsix, or not Karma and Crimsix, Karma and Formal, and they've dropped Nadeshot and they picked up, Karma. There's no real storyline anymore because the team who everyone wanted to succeed finally has. And that is something that is fine because you have a squad who's now on top. You have a team who is now the best team in the world, regardless of whatever anyone's opinions are. Even though they lost the last event, it doesn't mean anything, but it doesn't take away from their dynasty to the extent of what it is now or what it has been. But you have the team who's on top, and there's no storyline for anyone right now. There's no bad guy. Right? There's no bad guy in the scene where you're like, oh, I cannot wait for this good team or this good guy squad to face off against this bad guy squad. That doesn't happen right now in Call of Duty Esports. And he talked about the drama. There's Aches and Nadeshot, the interviews that they had during Black Ops 2. And the whole edition with Black Ops 2, why it was so great was because it had storylines. It was a younger game. Everyone was being able to experience it. Apologies there. Everyone was being able to experience the game for the first time, be able to see it for the first time. And plus there was a little bit of drama along with it. That's obviously, a major thing as well. But there were the rivalries, of course. Like I said, we talked about Nadeshot versus Aches, the pushing scandal, which has obviously, been a major thing that people have talked about prior. But that doesn't happen anymore. There's nothing really, in some cases, if you want to put it in quotes, to look forward to. In my opinion, there's things to look forward to because I like every aspect of the Call of Duty scene. I'm watching, certain teams, even if I'm not even watching a team who I hardly know who they are. Just being able to watch their streams and watch them online, it's a fantastic thing for me. I'm kind of a weird Call of Duty Esports fan because I love watching Call of Duty Esports, regardless of a team. If I'm a fan of a certain team, it doesn't really matter to me. I like watching every single squad, which I know might sound a little bit cookie cutter. But Nake's video, he really points out a lot of interesting things, which I thought were really good. If you got an opportunity, check it out. I just wanted to talk about a couple of things, in my opinion, why the Call of Duty scene may not be as exciting as it has been, and also is obviously a major issue right now because of the fact that we don't have too many events to kind of produce that. You're only going to get so many storylines in an online league, like I said, in which case you cannot hear the communication, you can't hear the constant arguments or the strive for the rivalries that are going on with one another. Really, it's all fan based. It's all like, oh, Optic or Envy versus Rise, which to me is my favorite matchup right now. But sure, the history behind that. You know what I mean? You don't know every single aspect. The regular viewer doesn't know all the history that these two have behind each other. And the only way that they realize that is through past events. There's a lot of fans who don't watch the league. If you didn't know that, there's a lot of people who don't watch the league. They do watch events though. That happens in every esport. You're not going to have too many people watching. Like, for example, if you're watching Dota, there's some people who only tune in to the internationals, myself included. I mean, hey, I'll watch an event here and there. But the way I know that is through rivalries, through events, through tournaments that happen. Granted, you're going to hear certain things that happen on Twitter occasionally. You're going to see things that happen occasionally, through streams. You're going to hear things here and there. But to the casual fan, they have no idea what is going on in the match besides the fact that these guys are just playing against one another. That's all they know. So it's a good point that Aches makes in this video. Like I said, make sure to tune into it. If I can maybe post a link in the description on a YouTube video that I'll obviously posting after this episode is kind of aired already on Twitch. I'll make sure to do that for those who are interested. But it's a really good video, though. He kind of goes on, like I said, he talks about the WWE, World Wrestling Entertainment, for those who don't know. The reason why it's popular is because of the storylines. We know it's not real. Not that Call of Duty Esports isn't real. Conspiracy right there. But everyone knows it's not real. And the only reason why it's popular is because of the storylines that they build. The reason why people enjoy watching it. It's not that they get up after the game's over or the match is over and they say, oh, great game, man. No, there's a good guy, there's a bad guy, there's storylines behind it, they have history together, and everyone knows that history or they would not be enjoying the match. And that's how they kind of get involved with it, is through that history that they've had with one another. So to me, the way that we make Call of Duty Esports grow necessarily is making a storyline happen, but having tournaments that consistently go on with teams and making squads who may not be super motivated right now be motivated. You know, and that's also that kind of leads to making a great game. That makes a game that people want to grind out, which leads us to the whole topic of boots on the ground Call of Duty. And that's obviously a major thing. That's obviously a topic that we can go on for forever. It's kind of like the line of thinking that happens for ages, right? So it's obviously something that I kind of want to mention. It's really interesting to me personally that it's just a topic that I wanted to bring up, and it's something that I personally have, passionate about, something that I personally really enjoy talking about just in general. It's always a good topic to kind of bring up. So for those who are interested, if you guys want to check that out, feel free to do so. I think actually Matt Wizzo just kind of posted in the chat. I'm not sure what happened in the live chat. It's kind of like staggered right now. Matt, that's an issue on my part. But yeah, let's go and move on to our final topics. Let's see, that video is out there for those who are interested. Check it out. It's worth it. I know it's an hour long, but do it. It's a good video in general. So I believe the last couple things that we can kind of talk about today are, I believe the Infinite Warfare guys announced that Terminal will actually be remade. If you buy I believe if you pre-order the copy of Infinite Warfare, you automatically get Terminal, the remake of Terminal, which is interesting. Terminal on the moon. Instead of flying out of airplanes, you'd be flying out of spaceships, which, is obviously kind of interesting, to say the least. I believe there were screenshots posted. I don't have a screenshot to show you guys personally. If you guys want to check that out, look on Twitter, look on stuff like that. That's obviously a major thing. It'd be interesting to see if that ever gets introduced to the competitive rotation or anything like that. But it's obviously interesting. And for those, if you guys have any questions, we don't have a crazy amount of viewers in the chat right now. I totally understand. That's totally fine to me. If anyone would like to comment questions, feel free to do so. We can maybe take a few, and then we might kind of close out the show for today. I know it's been kind of slow. I know it's not been the most entertaining episode that we've had compared to the first one. There's been a lot of stuff that's happened actually live in the show, which is kind of crazy. You obviously discovered the whole topic of double elimination versus single elimination. But the whole reason why I wanted to have this episode come today is because I really wanted to talk about Ix's video, because it is incredibly important. And to come from someone who's not just, a source. It's not just someone that you have watched before. It's someone who has experience to know exactly what they're talking about, and someone who's been there since the very, very beginning of Call of Duty Esports. It's important to know and to get insight from them, because they know exactly and really what they're talking about. They know exactly what they're talking about. So yeah, that's obviously stuff that I want to talk about today. Because we did talk about another league, the whole idea behind that, which I think is incredibly, incredibly important. I think it's a huge, huge thing that I want to see introduced. I did have a couple other notes written down about teams kind of forming, the idea of who's going to pick up DT. For those who are curious, I will be making most likely a YouTube video, or obviously talking about on the HUD about the new squads are going to be forming, as well as who's going to pick up the DT team, what's going to happen with all of that, which I think it should be pretty interesting, in my opinion. I think it should be pretty awesome to see. I think it'd be kind of cool to talk about. I'm going to do my best to make those as live as possible, depending on if I'm working or if I'm doing something. It might delay those a little bit, but for the most part, though, it should be good. I'm really looking forward to obviously making those happen and continuing on with the HUD. So, guys, I think that's going to kind of do it for episode number 2. Like I said, I know it wasn't the most entertaining one of all time, but, sometimes in Call of Duty Esports, not everything happens at the exact time that you'd like them to. I know we did have a live announcement, which kind of personally caught me off guard a little bit, but I think it kind of made the show a little bit more interesting, to be honest. So, So yeah, guys, that has been the HUD episode number 2. If you guys did enjoy or would like to, feel free to follow social media. If you guys like to follow me, make sure to follow me at LandO CoD on Twitter, as well as go to my YouTube channel. If you're not already there right now, just search LandO CoD or /AirLand, and you will find me there. Post YouTube videos, as well as post all of the full episodes of the HUD on there also. If you guys like to follow me on Instagram, feel free to do so, L1LandO. If you also would like to follow the HUD TV, or the HUD on Twitter, it is at the HUD TV. Post shows, post a number of different information there that only is available there. And it might be doing some giveaways shortly. So if you're interested, giveaways are going to start happening. I promise. As time does go on, we will start giving things away to the loyal fans that obviously tune in every time that a show does come out. So guys, that's going to do it for this episode of the HUD. Thank you so much for tuning in. We will see you guys all later. Have a fantastic day, and peace out.